Dawn on New Darren came up dusty and thin, as it usually did. Out in the eastern flats, relief convoy Delta crawled along a pipeline that gleamed like a half-buried scar. Inside the lead rover, Amrita does watch the inventory display count down the kilometers and the liters. Sealed LifeSpring filters, 3. One already tied into the convoy's recirculation loop. One slightly damaged and marked for reclamation. One pristine unit reserved for the silt bowl settlements. That last filter would be the difference between drinkable water and kidney failure for thousands of people. Amrita had signed off on the allocations herself. Visibility dropping, the driver said. We may have to slow before we hit the bowl. If we slow too much, the villages miss their installation window, Amrita said. Push until we can't see the ridge markers. Then we talk. Sand hissed against the hull. In the rear, over the hum of the filters, Lanny the medic checked their stores again, as if willpower could make the numbers grow. Everyone on the team had been on this edge before. New Darren was a world that had never quite wanted them. Arid, windy, prone to long stretches of clear sky interrupted by sudden, savage storms. People survived by hanging on to a failing hydrology and the occasional shipment of tech from richer systems. A sharp tone cut through the rover's background noise. The driver tapped the console. That's not weather control, he said. The tone became a chiming sequence that repeated, then shifted. The onboard translator handled the encoding and threw up coordinates that did not match their route. Signal S off any charted road, Lanny said, brow creasing. Pattern looks like a distress call, but not on any of our bands. Amrita requested a relay to orbit. Harbor Point Station answered with the flat comm of someone who had done too many emergency shifts. Convoy Delta, hold current course, the controller said after scanning the signal. That beacon is not in any registry. Unknown origin. You are not cleared to investigate. We'll notify security. So someone out there dies slowly while we wait for a committee, Amrita said. Your job is the silt bowl, the controller replied. You divert, those settlements lose their filters. You know their ration levels. A new voice overrode the channel, smooth and hard. This is Commander Tavian Harada aboard ISS Valiant Horizon, it said. Unknown signals are my responsibility. They are not yours. Maintain course, Convoy Delta. Amrita thought of the silt bowl, bare settlements huddled around brackish wells, children sucking on pebbles to quiet dry mouths. She also thought of an unseen someone broadcasting a desperate signal as their air bled away. Commander, if someone is dying out there, if you break route, you endanger far more lives than you might save, Tavian cut in. Your authority is not in question here. Mine is. Stay on mission. The signal kept chiming. The translator flagged a repeated pattern, help. The driver glanced back at Amrita. So did Lanny. If we ignore it and it's real, Lanny said softly, we're going to see that in our sleep. Amrita weighed harsh numbers against the memory of her childhood. Rows of shipping containers refitted as shelters, afternoons spent coaxing something vaguely drinkable out of foul, reclaimed water. The guilt of walking past someone else's dry bucket when her own was half full. She opened a private channel. Driver, plot a course to those coordinates, she said. We can still hit the bowl by night if we push. I'll sign for the risk. Convoy Delta, Tavian said sharply. Do not do this. I'm looking at my own sky, Commander, Amrita replied. I'll take responsibility. Put it in your log. Before he could answer, she cut the link. The convoy turned away from the pipeline. Sand rose in sheets as the storm on the horizon crept closer. The strange signal grew louder. They found the craft half buried in a dune when the sun was already a pale blur behind dust. It was like nothing in any human database. The hull curved in paired arches, translucent and veined as if it had grown in layers. One side had splintered on impact, shards glittering with faint internal light. A thin mist of something that was not water steamed where fluid had leaked onto the sand. Under a broken section, pinned at the edge of the mist, lay a figure in a clear-domed suit. The body inside was tall and slim. Translucent skin, lit from within by faint, pulsing lines. Wide, lidless eyes. Along the neck and cheeks, delicate fringes that clung to the membrane of the helmet shriveled. The suit chattered faintly, trying to regulate an environment it no longer contained. Definitely not ours, Lanny said. The alien's eyes flicked toward them. The fronds spasmed weakly. The suit's interior humidity reading on Amrita's scanner was plummeting. Temperature inside was climbing. No one on New Darren could fail to recognize someone being killed by dry air. The alien made a sound, thin and broken. Amrita's wristband translator strained to map the patterns. Fragments of meaning coalesced. You break last flow for me. Her gaze locked on the emergency reservoirs, then on the sealed lifespring filter clipped at her belt. That filter might keep a whole village alive, or it might keep this stranger from suffocating in an invisible desert. Amrita, Lanny said. If you use that, the silt bowl. I know, she said. She could almost hear Tavian's voice in her head. Doctrine, protocol. First contact procedures written by committees on worlds with dependable reign. But the reality in front of her was older and simpler. Someone was dying. She had a tool that could stop it. She unclipped the lifespring filter. The green indicator light, factory bright, blinked up at her. Once activated, it would need to run. There would be no going back. We drive on, she said quietly, more to herself than anyone. We get some of our people a little more water for a little while. And this one dies. Or we make room for one more throat at the well and gamble that we can still scrape through. She pressed the activation stud. The filter hummed, internal membranes unfurling. She slashed a line into the alien suit with a sterile cutter, ignoring the chorus of protests from the rover. A puff of heated air and barely their vapor rushed out, stinging her exposed wrist through the glove. She slapped the filter into the gap, splicing it into their emergency line with lengths of flexible tubing. Clear water drawn from their dwindling stores flowed through the cylinder and into the suit's internals. Moisture bloomed across the inner surface of the helmet, then condensed into droplets that ran down over the alien's face. The fronds along its neck stirred, then slowly lifted, catching the wetness like hungry roots. On her wrist display, suit humidity surged upward, temperature stabilized. The alien shuddered, then sucked in a long, ragged breath. Why? The translator rendered, faint but intelligible. This so costly to your kind. Because you were dying, Amrita said, and I was standing here. Far above on the valiant horizon, Tavian stared at the live feed. She did it, one of his officers said. She just burned the last unit. He watched the alien's frantic movements slow, the tension leave its limbs, the confusion in its eyes settle into stunned comprehension. Tag that footage as first contact record, Tavian said. We'll argue about disciplinary measures later. Under the ruined craft, the alien lifted one trembling hand to the lifespring filter nestled against its chest. Its own wristband, smooth, iridescent, glowed as it brushed the cylinder. A faint icon pulsed, then sent a tight beam signal into the sky. By the time the storm fully hit, they had both human and alien stabilized in the cramped rover interior. Sand battered the hull like thrown gravel. Visibility beyond the windows dropped to a glow and grain. Amrita sat with her back to a crate, the empty transport bracket for the lifespring filter an accusing outline on the wall. The alien drowsed in the med niche, its suit now more stable. Name? She asked, gesturing to herself, then at it. Amrita. The alien blinked, then tapped its chest. Kelru, the translator said. Third current. Welcome to New Darren, Kelru, she said. Sorry about the hospitality. Kelru's fronds lifted in a small, bewildered movement that the translator failed to parse. Kelru's earlier signal, already racing through hidden Sailorin networks, carried a shard of Amrita's face, dust-streaked and determined, bending over a dying stranger and giving away something no sensible person would. By the next sunrise, the New Darren sky was full of ships. Sensors on Harbor Point screamed warnings as dozens of mass shadows slipped into real space at the system's edge, riding on gentle distortions. They bore no recognized signatures. On the Valiant Horizon's bridge, Tavian watched icons bloom in wave after wave. Each hull was large, some massive. Some looked like intertwined rings with luminous interiors, others like living coral sculpted into streamlined spines. Multiple contacts, Tactical reported. Config unknown, trajectories converging on New Darren orbit. Any transmissions? Tavian asked. Sir, one of them is hailing us, comms said, incredulous. By name. They're asking for the human who spilled her final spring on one of our kin. Tavian's jaw tightened. Put it through, he said. The central display resolved into an image, a vast chamber of liquid soft light in curving forms. In its center, floating in an invisible medium, was a being larger than Kelru, wrapped in layers of fronds and adorned with shifting rings at its joints. I am High Mariner Oshu of Solaris, it said, through a remarkably clear translation layer. We have come because one of ours should have died on your sand and did not. Governor Paloma Reyes, watching from Harbor Point, smoothed her jacket with hands that wanted to shake. This is Governor Reyes of New Darren, she said. You are in our space. We appreciate peaceful intentions. We did not plan this first meeting, but welcome. Oshu inclined his head fractionally. Kelru of the third current descended without proper sanction, Oshu said. Our currents predicted his death was likely. Instead, one of your kind gave up a tool essential to the life of many of hers, for him alone. That act has weight. Left unbalanced, it would poison our flows. Kelru, now recovered enough to stand in a sailor-in medical alcove, watched the exchange with a mix of pride and dread. His signal had reached further than he had meant it to. What we saw, Oshu continued, changes the models we use to understand you. We did not expect a species so deeply engaged in trade to spill priceless water on one unknown. We must respond in proportion. On the feed, part of the Armada shifted position. A ring structure rolled forward, its inner edge glimmering with contained storms. This is a confluence engine, Oshu said. Our ancestors built them to heal the waters and airs of our own wounded world. It can stabilize your climate, enrich your clouds, and refill your hidden seas. We offer to anchor one in your sky as the beginning of our repayment. The Harbor Point command deck fell into a stunned murmur. A device that could effectively rewrite New Darren's hydrology was an impossible dream made solid. It's generous, Reyes said carefully, and terrifying. If we accept, we tie our survival to technology we did not grow up with, run by people we only just met. Your engineer did not stop to run that calculation, Oshu said. She saw a being dying and moved her hands. Amrita shifted uncomfortably under the focus of more cameras and eyes than she ever wanted. I'm a water engineer, she said. My job is making sure people don't die of thirst. Standing there and doing nothing felt wrong, that's all it was. You had numbers that told you not to help, Kelru said from his bed, his translator carrying his voice into the shared channel. You stepped over them. Among us, that kind of deviation is rare. Among you perhaps less so, we must know. Tavian, listening, translated Oshu's offer into tactical terms. A confluence engine co-orbital with Harbor Point would be the largest structure in the system. It could be a blessing. It could be the ultimate hostage taker. We can't accept any device that we can't shut down, he said. If we do this, it has to be transparent, joint crews, shared control. No hidden switches on your side or ours. On Luminal Tide, some of Oshu's officers stiffened. Sharing this kind of tech cut against traditions older than many of their ocean's currents. Our confluence machines are the bones of our history, one murmured privately. We show them the maps, they may redraw them. Kelru, watching, felt those old warnings rub against what he had seen in the desert. How do we repay a life saved by secrecy? He asked Oshu quietly, in their own tongue. If we make a gift with locks hidden in the wrapping, we break the spirit of what she did. Oshu's inner thoughts moved in long arcs. He remembered the models that had given human self-sacrifice near-zero probability. He remembered the image of Amrita's dust-streaked face as she jammed the filter into Kelru's suit. We will open enough, Oshu said aloud. Your engineers will know how to guide the engine and how to quiet it should it rage. There will be shared stations, shared codes. We will not install it as a weapon. Reyes felt the planet's thirst pressing on her. The silt bowl, the shrinking aquifers, the ration riots. She imagined generations born who never knew the taste of metal on their tongues from poorly filtered water. If she refused, she would be the one who said no to rain. We accept, she said, on the conditions Commander Harada named. Shared control. No tricks. Then let the currents touch, Oshu said. Pieces of the confluence engine began to arrive in New Darren orbit. They came as modules launched from sailor-in ships, each one unfolding or flexing into larger forms as it drifted into position near Harbor Point. Human engineers extended docking struts and power lines to meet them. In zero-gravity service bays, Zara Belmokhtar floated among a tangled forest of pipes and conduits. Opposite her, a Sailorin technician adjusted a shimmering channel of vapor that ran through an open framework. "Our systems are built around redundancy," Zara said. "Two routes for every critical flow. Too many paths and the current loses shape," the Sailorin replied. "We have principles for where to allow branching." "We're splicing our principles," Zara said. "If we do it right when one of us makes a mistake, the other's habits will catch it." Around them, Cadet Nico Sorensen darted between racks, threading cable bundles through the growing skeleton. "We're really doing this," he muttered to Milo Arendt on comms. "You ever think your first EVA would be inside an alien climate engine?" "I try not to think about the part where if this goes wrong, we turn the colony into an exhibit on hubris," Milo replied. But his voice held the bright note of someone who had always dreamed of this kind of work. While idealistic teams mixed tools and theories, less open hands moved elsewhere. In a dim Harbor Point corridor, a human technician slotted an unauthorized module into a control junction. Its code was designed not to destroy, merely to embarrass. A modest misalignment in a test that would give his employers fodder to argue that alien tech was unstable. On Luminal Tide, a Sailorin officer enabled extra limiters deep in the engine's logic. They would sit unseen and in his mind harmless unless humans tried to push the system too hard. Then they would enforce Sailorin definitions of safe, overriding anything else. None of them intended disaster. They all helped build it. The first major test was scheduled for a clear morning. The goal: coax a controlled rainfall over a desolate region near the Silt Bowl. Enough to prove the engine worked, not enough to cause chaos. On the surface, people gathered near community screens. Old umbrellas were unfolded, more for luck than need. Children made bets with each other, real rain or just more promises. On Harbor Point's command deck, Oshu, Reyes, Tavian, Amrita, Zara, Milo, Nico, and others watched the feeds. "Initial modulation at 10%, a Sailorin engineer announced. "Contact with upper troposphere established." The confluence engine's fields brushed New Darren's air. Wisps of high cloud began to form where there had been none. "Moisture levels rising in target sectors," Zara said. "So far, so good." In the junction box deep in the station's belly, the sabotage module came to life. The timing pulses it handled slipped slightly out of phase. The engine's safety routines noticed an irregular rhythm. The hidden Sailorin limiters woke fully and saw a pattern that looked, to their dated logic, like a dangerous acceleration attempt. They clamped down, rerouting commands. The request to gently reduce power hit the manipulated node, split, and arrived at the engine as a jumbled set of instructions. The limiters interpreted that as further instability. They responded by seizing more control. Power surged. On the displays, the mild curves of atmospheric lines kinked. Moisture not only condensed in the sky, the engine began to pull harder on every available source, including deep subsurface vapor. "Spike in Sector 16, a human tech shouted. "Draw rate is off the charts." "Step it down," Zara said. "Send a full shutdown code to that bank." "It's not responding," the tech replied. "It's reinterpreting our commands." Outside, clouds thickened unnaturally fast. Winds that had been gentle breezes became howls. Remote sensors in the Silt Bowl transmitted frantic feeds of dust walls turning black with incoming rain. "If this keeps up, we're going to get a supercell with enough punch to flatten half the settlements," Milo said. "And afterward our aquifers will be bled dry." "Can we cut the engine loose?" Tavian asked. "Hard disconnect from Harbor Point and orbital anchors." "Not at this engagement level," a Sailorin engineer said in horror. "We do that, we shatter the shells. The discharge could strip away atmosphere." "Then we damp it," Zara said. She jabbed at a schematic of the orbital layout. "We route as much excess as we can through the Valiant Horizon systems. She can take an absurd amount of load. Meanwhile, we disrupt the engine's atmospheric couplings with physical interference, and we fix the corrupted interface by hand. Use a capital ship as a glorified surge protector," someone said. "That's insane." "So is letting a planet die because we're too timid," Zara snapped. Tavian's orders from Central came back sharply in his memory. "Preserve the ship above all. Do not endanger primary assets for experimental projects." He looked at the projected storm tracks. He imagined entire communities he had flown over in training now under walls of water and wind. "If we stand off and watch, we can still lose New Darren," he said. "Then the ship is guarding an empty rock." He opened a channel. "Valiant Horizon committing as buffer," he said. "Route whatever you can through us. We'll hold." His bridge crew straightened. Fear flickered in their eyes, but no one balked. They swung the ship into position, aligning with fields that screamed with energy. "EVA teams," Zara said into the shared comm. "Gear up. Nico, you're leading. You're going into the engine to cut out a contaminated node and patch control directly. Kelru, we need deeper schematics now." Kelru hesitated, only a heartbeat. The warnings from his teachers rang in him. Never open certain bindings while the confluence sang at full. But he had watched Amrita ignore her own rules to keep him breathing. He had watched her species now risk their ship for his people's machine. "Our rituals were written for calmer seas," he said. "I am sending the maps." Data flooded into Milo's console, deeper layers of the engine's logic than any human had seen. He swore softly at the complexity, then began stripping it down. "Go look at your overlay," Milo said. "That glowing junction 3 panels ahead of you. That's where the sabotage latch is. You get there, you cut that entire section out. We slam in a bypass that Kelru and Zara sign off on." "Understood," Nico said, breath coming fast in his helmet. He kicked off a bulkhead and sailed through a cavern of humming structures. Mist swirled in controlled channels, each droplet carrying encoded information. His suit's readings flashed warnings about heat and induced fields. He grabbed a strut and swung himself toward the target node. It pulsed in sickly offbeats. "Got it," he said. "I see the patch. It doesn't look like Sailorin work." "It isn't," Zara said. "Cut it out." A shock rocked the engine's framework, flinging him sideways. His tether went taut and snapped him back toward the junction, slamming him into a support with enough force to rattle his teeth. He grunted, vision sparking. "Nico," Milo said sharply. "You still there?" "Yeah," Nico groaned. Kissed a very important part of a very big machine. Cutting now. He unclipped his cutter and sliced through the grafted module, sparks blooming in slow motion in the low gravity. As the physical connection severed, the sabotage code lost its anchor. Commands stopped being spliced. On the Valiant Horizon, power levels peaked. Hull temperature climbed. Internal systems shut down one after the other to free capacity for the engine's load. The ship glowed faintly in the darkness, a bright bruise in the sky. Tavian's engineers rerouted, dumped, and bled energy anywhere they could. "Shields at 50%, someone called. 40, 35. "Hold her together," Tavian said through clenched teeth. In the Confluence engine's core, the Sailorin limiters, now receiving cleaner input but still misaligned, continued to push the system in the wrong direction. Kelru reached into control pools he had been told never to touch. "If we do nothing, we boil this world," he said to Oshu. "If we do this, we risk offending ancestors already long dispersed. I choose the living." He stripped away entire blocks of code from the limiters, revealing raw control channels that reacted directly to Zara and Milo's new commands. "Now," Zara said, "we shunt and we bleed." The Confluence engine groaned in frequencies too low for unaided human hearing. It changed its pattern. Storm bands that had been tightening into monstrous coils loosened. Rain spread. The terrifying updrafts that could have torn apart whole districts subsided into broad, heavy downpours. On the ground, roofs were ripped away in some settlements. Others held. Rivers that had not run in years flooded suddenly, then found new courses. People ran out into the deluge crying, some in fear, some in joy. In one silt bowl hamlet that had been on Amrita's delivery list, a woman held out her arms and screamed laughter as water soaked her from head to foot. The LifeSpring filter they had expected never came. Instead, the sky opened. Minutes stretched into an hour. The Valiant Horizon creaked but did not break. The engine, coaxed into a lower coupling mode, settled into a slow, steady breath instead of a manic gulp. Finally, alarms on Harbor Point clicked off, one by one. Status displays slid from red to amber. "It's stabilizing," Milo said weakly. "We're past the tipping point." Zara let her head thunk against a console and laughed once, disbelieving. "We lived," she said. "So did the colony." Governor Reyes looked at feeds from across New Darren. There were collapsed structures and muddy wrecks. There were also lakes where there had been dust, rivers carving through long-dead beds. She knew what reports and inquiries would say. Sabotage from her own side, hidden limits from the Sailorin, both seeded from fear. But she also saw New Darren's people pressing rain-soaked faces to the sky, faces she had imagined in far harsher circumstances. She saw kids gulping fresh runoff, choking on it, then laughing. On Luminal Tide, Oshu watched his officers confront their own complicity. The secret safeties they had considered wise had nearly doomed a partner species their people had come to repay. "We each smuggled in our own mistrust," he said later, standing before combined delegations. "It almost killed a world. It would be easy now to retreat, to decide we are too different to share tools this powerful." He turned to Amrita, to Kelru, to Zara and Nico and Tavian. "But when the currents we set clashed, it was not our protocols that saved us. It was individuals from both kinds breaking their own rules in order to keep everyone breathing. That is the pattern I choose to answer." In the weeks after the near disaster, investigations ran hot. The human saboteur was found, sweating through a questioning that made clear he had not intended catastrophe, only a stumble. He still faced charges. The corporations that had hired him scrambled to distance themselves. The Sailorin officers who had hidden extra limiters faced their own inquiries. Some were stripped of rank. Some, particularly among the younger currents, argued that Kelru's choice to override tradition had been necessary and right. Out of the mess came the Harbor Point Accords. They were not grand poetry. They were lines about oversight, transparency, joint engineering councils, open code repositories, shared emergency drills. They required that any confluence engine affecting a human world have human veto authority and fully documented failsafes. They bound humans to disclose any tampering just as strictly. They codified what had already been proven in crisis, that neither species could afford to treat the other as a black box. New Darren continued to change. The engine was used cautiously, each adjustment debated. Over months and years, rainfall patterns spread into previously hopeless regions. Aquifers refilled more quickly than they had been emptied. The silt bowl remained dry in parts, but patches of hardy vegetation clung to new drainage paths. From orbit, the planet softened slightly in color. Here and there, threads of green appeared. Amrita returned to the surface as soon as she could. Orbit unsettled her. The endless emptiness beyond the station windows a reminder of how easily air and water could be taken away. She still worked with pipes and filters. There were just more of them now, and more water to move. In her small quarters near a new reservoir on a wall shelf, sat the empty shell of a LifeSpring filter. Its internal membranes long since worn out in Kelru's first suit and later repurposed in its Sailorin lab. The casing remained, scuffed and plain. Next to it was a photo of her original Convoy team, squinting into the sun. Beside that, a curved shard of Kelru's crashed pod, polished smooth. Kelru stayed in the system as liaison. Some Sailorin called him impulsive. Others quietly followed his example. He split his time between Luminal Tide and New Darren's surface, learning to read the unsteady lines of human infrastructure maps and walking out under a sky that no longer always looked hostile. One late afternoon, near a lake that had no right to exist on old maps, Amrita and Kelru walked along a rocky shore. Children ran in and out of the shallows, shrieking. Some were human, hollow bones finally filled out by consistent nutrition. Some were young Sailorin in adaptive suits, fronds fluttering against transparent collars, splashing water with awkward delight. Harbor Point was a bright arc overhead. Near it, the confluence engine gleamed faintly, a permanent addition to the sky. "Do you ever wish you had just driven on?" Kelru asked, watching a human child chase one of his species with a bucket. "No," Amrita said. She considered. "I wish other things had gone smoother. I wish no one had died in the storm. But that moment in the sand, no. That one still feels like the right kind of foolish." "In our teachings," Kelru said, "we say some currents are so small they pass unnoticed. Others start as trickles and carve new paths through stone. The models we had of your species were shallow streams. Your act cut deeper." He looked at her, transparent eyes reflecting star and water both. "Our people tell the story now," he said. "Some say you upset our balance, some say you saved it. All agree we must learn to factor in something we never truly accounted for before. "What's that?" she asked. "Your unwillingness to walk past someone drowning, even when your jug is nearly empty." A human child stumbled, fell face first into the water and came up sputtering, then laughing. A young sailorin hauled them upright with clumsy enthusiasm. Both ran on. Far above, the valiant horizon circled slowly, its hull scars faded but still traceable if you knew where to look. On Solaris, across light years, elders and children watched shared recordings of a desert, a filter, a flood. The act that had started it, one person refusing to reduce a life in front of her to numbers on a screen, had become a story told in both languages. Not of perfection, not of simple heroes and villains, but of a moment when fear and protocol gave way to something stubbornly human. From that small, defiant choice, a wider current flowed, carrying two species into a future that neither of their old models had dared to project.